Alrighty, guys. I've been wanting to have this particular awesome guest back for quite some time, especially considering the first time we had him on. I want to say he was probably um, either our first or second guest and our first air associated guest, and he has quite the story. He is a retired senior master sergeant E8 in the United States Air Force, but he flew with it is also, his name is Jim Burns. He flew with the 20th SOS, better known as the Green Hornets. He was a crew chief and a door gunner, and he supported at first he was with Project. Well, SOG wise, he'll fill us in before that what he was doing, but SOG wise, he filled in and was with helping out with Project Omega, Mad Dog Jerry Shriver, Jim Bolin, Larry White, and the like, Lowell Stevens, many more famous names. And then in 68 or so, when Omega and the projects began to dwindle down, CCS was formed, and the Green Hornets went down to Bambi Tui and were CCS support and assault helicopters, considering the fixed wing issues down there. So I'm excited because we have a absolute treasure trove of photos to show. Many I did not have the first time, even though I couldn't show them, of Mr. Jim and a lot of the helicopters. But without further ado, with me talking and rambling all morning, I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Jim. And first off, thank you, Mr. Jim, for joining us again, and have Mr. Jim give a little brief bio on himself for all of the new people who have not seen the first edition with Mr. Jim. Mr. Jim, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Bud. I appreciate you doing these podcasts too, getting the word out about a lot of information that hadn't been out before. So, as Bud said, I retired as a senior master sergeant E8 from the Air Force. I spent my whole career in helicopters, Air Force helicopters. Started out on H-19s and then went to H-43s. Actually, my first venture into Southeast Asia was with H-43s in 1964 at Nakhon Phanom, Thailand. I was TDY out of the Philippines at that time. And then in 67, I was given a full tour assignment at Nha Trang with the 20th Helicopter Squadron, they were called at that time. Later, they were renamed to SOS, Special Ops Squadron. Spent a tour there. Then I had a stateside tour for a year, and then I was back in at NKP Thailand with the 21st Special Ops Squadron, doing the same SOG missions that I was doing with the Green Hornets and the secret war missions we were doing in Laos with the Laotian army and so forth. I was on H3s then, and I spent the rest of my career with H3s, except for the last 3 years when I was reassigned. I made E8 and was reassigned as the chief of maintenance to a Huey unit in Indian Springs, Nevada, and finished off my career with the N model Hueys. Had some exciting times with the 20th and with the 21st. Had a lot of great warriors, and that absolutely they were warriors. My heroes were those guys that we put into the field, and thankfully we were able almost always to get them back out. That's kind of it for the bio thing. I retired in '79, and I live in Florida now. Been there since '79.
Yes, sir. Wow. Sorry about that for the silence for a minute. I'm just so excited about the stories and the photos we've got going for today. That was interesting because, like in the introduction, I kind of just focused more on your SOG Project Omega work. Could you kind of speak about and I've got some photos of back in your earlier days, but could you speak about what it was like? I know you originally were going to go maintenance and ended up, I think, for a few weeks you were a helo mechanic, and then uh y- y- you were I believe an instructor told you you needed to get on the aircraft or get involved with the aircraft. Well,
No, I spent 18 years flying on helicopters as a flight mechanic. They changed our name, our position name over the years from flight mechanic to, well, it started off as helicopter mechanics, then as flight mechanics, and then as flight engineers. And I think these days they call them special mission operators now, or special mission aviators. But I flew my entire careers on H-19s, H-43s, H-1Fs and Ps and Ns and CH and HH 3Es and Cs.
wow. Okay. So you and so H-19s, and then when you first really your first full, I guess a while with the same aircraft would be around the time you were with the H-43s, and I believe you mentioned the Philippines, but also a TDY trip. Is that what you were associated with at that point in time? Were the H-43s?
Yeah, we were the very first air rescue unit sent into the Southeast Asian War, and originally well, all the rest of the people that I was with TDY with, I was the only one from Clark. The rest of them were out of Japan, and the three birds we had, the H-43Bs, were out of Japan also from the 36th ARS. But I was sent TDY from the 31st on the H-43Bs, and we were the first rescue unit sent into the Southeast Asia War.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And with you end up getting to a TDY, what exactly brought the TDY aspect? What was going on at that point in time? Clearly, the war and things were going on. The secret war had been going on for a while. What initially got you TDY to Thailand? What was your job going to be, and what was going on?
Well, I was to augment the unit out of Japan as a flight mechanic, and we weren't supposed to be armed. We really didn't have any guns other than our personal weapons. But what was going on was the photo recce birds that were flying missions in Laos were starting to get shot down, and there was no rescue support for them except for Air America. And the Air Force decided that we were getting involved and it was time to send some support there. I got there in, I think it was June 20th or something like that of 64 at NKP, and there was about 25 of us there, and we had three helicopters, and that was basically it. There was like four shacks or so on the base that the Seabees had left when they built the airfield. And we lived in town, commuted back and forth to the base about 10 miles every day. And we were standing alert for rescue missions from the photo recce birds that were working in Laos. And then, of
Oh,
course, the Gulf of Tonkin incident occurred in August 7th, I think. And that's when that base really started to build up. And when I was back there, I left there, there was probably almost 100 guys there by then. But when I came back in 69 to the 21st, there was like 3 or 4,000 guys there. It was totally different uh, from when I got there in 64, which was just really a bare base. It just had a steel runway, 6,800 feet of steel runway with overruns. That was it. So
that is why I can't imagine what that was like. And I think I've got, yeah, this is you in 1964. I cannot imagine you. '64 to seeing the Secret War grow coming back. What's going on here, Mr. Jim?
Well, that would have been on August about the 9th. After the Gulf of Tonkin incident. They started sending C-124s in with people to build shacks on the base. Just put radio relays and radar and stuff. This guy was the second one in. The first day, the day before, they had brought in one of the big Air Force fire trucks, and then they started bringing more 124s in. He was the second one in, and when he landed on that steel runway, he landed long, and then he realized he was landing long. He poured the coals to it, and then he realized he didn't have enough airspeed to get off again. So he tried to stop, and he ended up going off the overrun at the end of the runway, the south end, and went off to the side into the mud. A couple of the props hit the mud, dinged them up, and also broke the scissors on his landing gear. And the brand new fire truck that we had went out and doing his thing. He went out in front of him like he was supposed to, and it got stuck in the mud too. So we ended up having to hire a Thai guy with a Caterpillar to come out and drag them things out of the mud and get them back into the parking area.
Lord. So with like you said, NKP was, sorry, I'm going through photos trying to get back to your original. NKP, but 64, it's got to be small, like you said, and it sounds like, from the most part, I don't know if the term was around even by this time, but it sounds like y'all are doing the rescue missions are almost early forms of bright lights, going in for pilots. And did y'all do aircraft as well, trying to get aircraft out?
No, it was just pilots. This guy just happened to be an accident that came in there, but we were sent there to rescue any pilots that got shot down on their photo recce missions, and of course later that turned into bombing missions. And I was there from June to October, I believe, and I never had any actual rescue missions across into Laos while I was there. They really started happening about a month after I left.
Wow. And is this one of your birds?
No, that's the belly of the C-124 you're looking at there. Oh, okay, yeah, that was one of them, yeah.
Wow. And what were y'all doing with this? Was this a rescue bird? Or
yeah, it was a rescue bird. The kind of that modelly paint job look you can see is when they came in at that time, Air Rescue. Those birds had a bright orange band around where the cockpit doors are at, and then a bright yellow band around the tail, back behind where it says force, and had a great big emblem just up above the star there. And the tail was all bright orange. And when they brought the birds in, they brought them into Udorn, and that's where they were reassembled and flown over to NKP. But when they brought them in there, the Air America guys asked us if we really wanted all those bright colors on there, and we said, well, no. And so they volunteered to paint them for us overnight while we were getting the assembly work done. And it ended up so not a bad looking paint job, but they got rid of all the bright stuff. But they wanted to paint over everything, the stars, the Air Force, and everything. But they Air Force wouldn't let them do that.
Oh no! I mean, that's a peculiar looking bird. I can honestly say, other than when I've got these and started looking through all these photos, I don't think I've ever seen this aircraft before.
Well, that was a good little bird. It had a short range. It was designed for fighting fires when an aircraft crashed on an airfield.
Oh.
They had every base that had Air Force fighters or bombers or whatever in the Southeast Asia had a couple of these. Some had 3 or 4. And in reality, that little bird had more actual rescues more lives saved than the Jolly Greens and any other Air Force unit combined in the Vietnam War.
Holy cow.
Had,
Wow.
had the same engine, a T-53 engine, as the Army Hueys had.
I mean do you know how long further this thing stayed in service? What was it, around a while, or?
They began retiring them after Vietnam. I think they finally retired the last of them around 74, 75, somewhere in there.
Wow. Man, clearly that thing's a little workhorse. Wow. I had
Yeah,
no idea from clearly don't judge a book or an aircraft by its appearance.
yeah, that was a little bull. I mean, it could hover higher than most of the other helicopters. Quite a machine, really was.
Wow. And there's Mr. Jim's plaque he got for that's FOB2, and that's during the Omega days before they officially went CCC in late '68. That's a very, very interesting plaque, and I can't imagine the honor you got. How did you receive that from the base commander? Was there a
No, Jerry Shriver gave that to me after a mission when I think he got a Silver Star on. I think I got a DFC on.
Oh yes, that mission. We're definitely guys, we've got some some good missions we're definitely going to be talking about. I had no idea that that Jerry got you that. That is amazing. Let me pull up because I think there's also um another that's you. Heck, let's talk a little bit about your photos while we've got you here and we're in the photo mode. Let me change off of this. Sorry, I apologize, guys. There are a ton of photos on here today. Um, there we go. Um, there's the workhorse. There's Mr. Jim in '64. And is this on your return back to Thailand?
Yeah, this was. I think this happened in late '69. We on our SOG missions, flying out of NKP, we almost always have to cross the trail. And flying with the Green Hornets, of course, we were on the east side of the trail, so we didn't have to fly high. But to cross the trail, we would get as high as we could get, around 10,000 feet or so. I was not on this bird that day, but this is one of the birds that got hit by a 37 millimeter anti-aircraft uh, round, which I'm holding as it was crossing the trail. And they were really quite lucky in a sense that, as you can see there, this bird has a ramp on the back, but we flew with the ramps removed just to reduce the weight. And that round went in where the ramp would have been and exploded outward, as you can see. And if that ramp had been there, that round would have exploded inside. So they were quite lucky that day.
And were was all of this at this point in time? Was this SOG oriented work? Was that bird a SOG extract or a SOG insert bird or?
Yeah, it was on a SOG mission, as I remember. And those we flew three ship on SOG missions. We had one ship with the team, or one ship that was empty that was going to pick up the team, and then a second ship that had a basic crew and a SOG medic on it. And if somebody on the team was wounded, then that's the bird that would pick the teams up, so the medic could start working on them. Otherwise, the empty one would get them. And then the third bird was just a basic crew, pick up anybody else that might went down. So
Man, oh man. I mean, I can't imagine. I've there's a similar story and I've got to find the little link I've got of it of you explaining one of these stories, but Captain David Carr, a SOG Recon XO, was an NKP flying, I believe, on one of these birds also, and he had the same experience. It absolutely stitched up. I can't remember if it was 20 37. I don't think it was 51. It was either 37 or 51. And it nearly knocked him out of the sky. It was and he's got photographs, and maybe they'll pop up because it was a 20 a green hornet bird out of NKP. So I'll be anxious to see about that and see if we can find that.
We weren't green hornets at NKP. Our squadron was Dust Devils, but our call sign was Knives.
Dust Devils, and your call sign were Knives.
Yeah.
Okay, that is brand new information for me. I needed to let me write that down. Wow, heavy duty. And that, of course, gentlemen and ladies, if we got any watching, this is what you just heard, which we'll be talking about in a bit. This is his Distinguished Flying Cross, which is doesn't get any more hardcore than that. That is that's when he was supporting Jerry Shriver, if I'm not mistaken. But here we got some. There's a normal bird right here. Could you talk us a little bit about these next two, these bullet hole photos that we're going to see here? I don't even know what that is.
That's a CH-3 from the 21st Helicopter Squadron. And then the one with the bullet holes, that particular bird, there's a little bit of a story with that bird. It's known as the Black Mariah. And it was with the 20th Helicopter Squadron, and then in '69 it was transferred to us at the 21st. At that time, when I was there, and I was on this bird, and the crew chief, after we got on the ground, the crew chief and the sheet metal guys, they counted 78 hits. One of the Laotian troops that we were carrying, he took a round right square in his butthole. Other than that, and we had like 20 troops on board. There wasn't anybody hit other than that one, and he was sitting on the seat just where that window is, that's got the green around it. It actually went in through the sponson and came up through the belly and hit him. It didn't hit any vital parts of the helicopter at all. As a matter of fact, we made 3 more inserts of those Laotian troops after we got to all these hits. But at the time, I didn't know the history of the Black Mariah. That's a CH-3 C. Well, it's an E when we got it. It's number 639676. It's a tail number. And one day I was at the Air Force Museum looking at the Black Mariah on display, and I kept looking at it, and I said, geez, all these patches on this bird sure look familiar. And next time I went to the museum, I brought my pictures with me, and I matched them up. And that's when I found out that I had been flying on the Black Mariah. And I didn't know anything about the history of it. But the tale of that is it was painted black because they were going to try to do some night missions. But in actuality, and during my research for my website, I've actually corresponded with the crew chief that painted it black. And the reason it was painted black was when they arrived in Thailand. This was the first 2 CH-3Cs to arrive. They came over with from a tactical air command, and they were painted in a dark OD green color that was standard for TAC aircraft at that time. And they wanted all the markings painted over, and the only paint they could find at NKP was some flatback black paint. So the crew chief went out with that, and he painted over the U.S. Air Force and the star and all that. Any marking on it, he painted with a paintbrush and with flat black paint. And when the line chief saw all those blotches of black on it, he just told him to paint the whole damn thing black. And that's the bottom line that I've been able to find out of why it was actually painted black, even though the tail that goes with it, it was painted black for night missions. And I think they may have tried some night missions with it. I'm just not sure.
That is, and I think I got the last photo completely mixed up because I was just reading because I've got a story of you on the Ho Chi Minh Trail or a story talking a little article on you, and it mentioned not only this bird. Let me show the the next photo because there's even more. Even much more damage to the aircraft. Gosh, where in the heck there it is right there. Sorry about that. Right here, all through the nose, I mean, look in the guys in the back right here where the crew comes in. I mean, going straight through. It's a wonder the pilots weren't killed as well. But I just realized and heard that some of these shots that you were actually almost hit in the head several times by gunfire.
Yeah, I was standing in the previous picture you had there with the cabin door. I was standing right there as we were, clearing trees and stuff as we were going in to drop off the troops. Yeah, I was standing right there, and I don't think I have a picture of it, but you can see the top of the cabin door there. There was a round, one of the rounds that went in about an inch above my head, above that bar you can see going across there, which was an inch or so above my head.
Good Lord. And that, as you were mentioning with the recon team, I believe also what it said was you had inserted the recon team, and immediately all hell broke loose, and y'all had not flown off, but were not over them, so to speak. And immediately after being shot to hell, excuse my language, had to go back in and get the men out, if I'm not mistaken. 70 men.
No, that wasn't this mission.
Oh,
We actually, that was part of like I think we had 6 birds on that mission to move a bunch of Laotian troops into a landing zone. And when we got in, when we went ahead and landed, we got raked. We were maybe 10 feet off the ground when we got raked from nose to tail. And we went in and landed that troop, and we kept the one that was wounded on board, and I think one other one stayed with him, and flew them back to where we were picking up the troops at, and landed and checked the bird over, and nothing wrong with the bird other than a bunch of holes in it. So we loaded up another 20 or so troops and went off and took them over to the same place we'd dropped the others off. I think we made 3 trips that day, 3 inserts that day.
I saw that. I saw the 2, and again, I clearly it's talking about several missions here. But I'll post that article. It's just absolutely amazing. Before we go on, while you're at NKP and working this area at this point in time, are you guys wearing what you would normally see, what we're going to see in the pictures of you wearing? Did y'all have y'all's plates on? Did y'all have your ballistic helmets? What were y'all?
We had ballistic helmets, and we had a armor plates, chicken plates. Most of us didn't wear them because they were a little bit restrictive. In the Hueys, we just sat on them when I was with the Green Hornets. I think you probably got a picture of me with my assistant crew chief there in the Hueys, and we had them on, but we put them on for the picture. It wasn't something we normally wore. Like I say, there it is. We normally sat on them. The pilots would have put them in the chin window.
And I mean, considering y'all would put them under, and I know the pilots would get as many as they can to put under. Would they? I mean, I know a 37 and a 51, nothing stopping that. But I mean, guys would get lucky, and I mean, the plates would work. I mean, wouldn't they? Pretty well. I mean.
Oh yeah. They would stop small arms fire. They do pretty good on that. They were just so cumbersome to wear when you were trying. If you can see that F model Huey there is the same cabin as a B model in the Army. It's a small cabin. So when you get a 6 and sometimes a 7-man team, plus the 2 gunners in the back, there's not a hell of a lot of room to move around. So.
Oh yeah, we're gonna be showing some of y'all when y'all are actually in combat and hosing an area down, and people will be able to get a good look at just how tight like you said, how tight it is. But not only that, when you've got the new guns in, because I think you had mentioned y'all still had the bungeed, as we see back there, the bungeed M60s, and there'll be upgrades in weaponry, and of course with better gear and all that, more space is taken up. So I've always wondered, and as a matter of fact, I think in the group the other day, some of the CCS guys were saying, how in the heck did we get in those things trying,
Yeah, they it was tight, but they seemed to scurry right in there when they were getting ready to go home.
That's what Mr. Steve Pletcher, CCS veteran, guys, he said as well. He said, I was awful skinny, but with that many people in there, we didn't find it too hard, considering the alternative when you've got a platoon of angry North Vietnamese shooting at you and wanted to capture you. So we found ways to squeeze in mighty quickly.
The interesting side note is the F models or P models, either one, were doing some village evacuations, and they had one of the F models had 14 people in the back. That's these are Vietnamese, they're small people, but they still had a crowd back there.
I can't even begin to imagine seeing the the bum rush to get all 14 in there and make sure everybody's in there, and nobody's going to get left behind. I can only imagine what that must have been like. That is, whew,
when something like that, as I remember that when the both gunners were standing out on the skids, and there may have been some of the Vietnamese standing out there too.
And with the Green Hornets, with when was the big change? Because if I'm not mistaken, if you can help me out and correct me, I remember you helped me get the post correct. But this was actually at Kontum, and I believe you said 1967.
Yes, it was Kontum in '67. I got to the Green Hornets in I think it was April of '67, and I spent most of my tour deployed. And we stayed at FOB2 until October of '67, and then in November we moved to Bambatui East, and I spent the remainder of my tour basically out there. The only time I went back to Nha Trang was when my bird had to go back for an inspection or something, or some upgrades or something like that. And I had better meals at the FOB camps, at the Special Forces camps, and always had hot water showers, which we didn't have in the Trang. So it was more comfortable living out in the field than it was at the base.
It's that's always one of the wild things. The A camp guys had it rough in some of their areas, but at the FOBs, you come right back home after a hard day's work, and you got cool beer waiting on you and a nice shower, and most times you got a nice good rack to sleep on. So that is and I've got some interesting photos we'll show in a bit. Some of y'all's digs and some of the rooms y'all are staying in, some interesting photos and y'all setups. There was, let me see here before I keep going. I think someone had a question that I accidentally yep. He was curious, RL64 RL was, how much unofficial stick time do you have in helos?
How much what?
Unofficial stick time. I mean, you getting to hop on the sticks and
I probably got oh, maybe 20 or 25 hours. Every unit I was with, they wanted to make sure their crew chiefs or their flight mechanics or flight engineers could at least get them on the ground safely if something happened.
That's what I was always curious about, is making sure that the pilots at least had one of y'all that they trained or at least tried to coach a bit. God forbid something happens to him mid-flight.
Yeah, I probably got to, I may have more time than that too, come to think of it. When I was still in H-43s at Shepherd Air Force Base, which was where the pilot training was going on at that time, I was part of the functional check flight crew, which was just me and a pilot. And I spent a year there. It got, I don't know, probably halfway through my tour when we went out to do an FCF. He just read the checklist and let me do everything, take off landings and everything. So I flew a lot. Well, after the whatever the check FCF was being done for, you had to do certain procedures on that. And after we accomplished them, he just gave me the stick for the rest of the time we stay up.
That's amazing. Uh, I I was about to say, when you first mentioned 25 hours, I was like, I'm sure you got behind the stick more than that. At either training or at least let the pilots letting you mess around a bit. I'm sure you you probably became pretty proficient. I mean, you could have got everybody back home and landed. I feel pretty sure. With it.
Yeah, you felt I could get them on the ground if something happened.
Oh man, I can't imagine what that must have been like. If hopefully that never happened. Did that ever happen to where you had to take over?
No, it never did. One interesting thing about proficient on them, of course, the H3s and the H1s and the H19s all had tail rotors, where the H43 was intermashing. There's no need for a tail rotor. And the difference on those two birds, if like on a Huey, if you put in a demand for more power, you're going to have to put in some rudder to counteract that. In the H43, if you put in a demand for more power, you have to push the cyclic stick forward or backward if you're taking power off, because the torque on that one is vertical. It's not around the mast, you know.
Yeah, we've got a few good questions before we dive into some of the more photos and some more stories. Oh my goodness, we've got I know you remember Chips did Mr. Larry Wilcox. He said amazing stories. Thank you for your service. We had to fly the terrible Sikorsky 34s and some of the old Chinooks.
Yeah. We flew alongside the King Bee H-34s of ENAF. We flew with them on several missions as well.
And it seems like besides y'all and some of the others, the King Bees those pilots are held in such high regard. It was every time I've heard them spoke about that, it was like a roller coaster ride, but that most of the guys always felt good knowing that they had y'all and the King Bees coming after them, because if y'all put a team in, y'all do anything y'all could to get back in there and get them out.
Oh yeah. Generally, the way we operated, when whatever crew put the team in, that was their team while they were in the field, and they were the ones to go get them out. Of course, that might get altered if some of the team was wounded. They'd send the bird with the medic on board to get them out. But the general rule was, if a team was in the field, the crew that put them in is the ones going to pull them out.
There's some great photos of some of the guys at the launch sites, which I'll actually bring up because there were quite a few there early on, waiting for a team to either call for a prairie fire emergency or just to let them know they needed to get out or what have you. It's a great photo, and if I can find that, I'll bring it up here at some point in time. Daniel was since you were talking about NKP earlier and mentioned Air America, did you have any personal interactions, work interactions, other than just seeing Air America?
Yeah, we had, I had a bird. This is when I was with the 21st. I had an H3 that lost an engine on a mission coming across the trail, and he overtemped the second engine, and they put it down at a Lima site in Laos and left it overnight. And we went out the next morning to do a double engine change on it, and it was Air America's latest Porter aircraft, a single engine turboprop aircraft that hauled us out there. Each one carried an engine and the tools and the hoist and so forth. That bird is quite amazing to me. I've seen them at NKP on the taxiway take off across the taxiway, not the length of the taxiway, just across the width of the taxiway. And that day when we went in to change those two engines, when he went into land, he touched down with 0 airspeed. He just touched down and turned right off to the side, and we unloaded him there. It's amazing to me that aircraft was. Yeah, and they would come in at times, and some of the Lao troop movements we were doing were being coordinated through them. They would be like our facts at some of the LZs we were taking those troops in.
Some of the guys mentioned that some of them could be a little highfalutin and snooty. Did the guys you come across, were they pretty down to earth guys, pretty good guys?
Yeah, the ones I ran across were. Yeah, matter of fact, some of them were ex-Air Force helicopter guys.
Wow. Okay, there you go then. Wow. Oh, Kyle's got some here. We've got several good ones. Wow. Thank you guys for the great questions. These are great. In what ways did the tactics and strategies employed by the enemy affect your approach to flying and your duties as a crew chief?
Well, when I was with the 20th, we would go to our LZs around 2,000 feet or so, get out of small arms range, and like I said, from flying from that side of the trail, we didn't have to cross the trail, so anti-aircraft fire wasn't much of an issue, and you just find out how many was there if somebody was waiting on you when you went in, and our gunships were our main support. Matter of fact, in Laos in the early days, there was no fighter escort allowed to go with us. It was just our own gunships because we weren't there. So, but the side where when I was flying out of NKP with the 21st, when we had to cross the trail every day, twice, once going to the LZ and once coming home, the formation, the 3-ship formation, and we had fighter escort with us A1s and FAC, a couple of FACs. But we would get our helicopter formation, our 3-ship formation, as high as we could possibly go to crossing the trail to try to avoid the anti-aircraft fire, and which would meant that the bird with the team on, they could probably get maybe to 8,000 to 9,000 feet, and then the bird with just a medic on, he could probably get another 1,000 feet. And the basic crew bird would get up around 10,000 feet across the trail. So our formation was kind of jagged.
There's a interesting piece of gear, and I was curious if you've seen this. This was somehow the Hornets ended up with it. Let me find it. It's a piece of NVA gear that I've been led to believe that was for aiming and trying to learn how to lead or shoot at Green Hornet helicopters. Did you ever see that or hear about?
Yeah, yeah, that was something that was captured at an NVA camp, and I really don't know what it was for. I never actually laid eyes on this. I think that happened after I left.
Yes, sir. Wow, it says CIA. I wonder if that's real. CIA, 23rd of May, 1970. EF Company and Exploitation Force. I guess it's CCS. And 20th SOS.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder. It was labeled as a aiming tool, but I honestly don't. It's a very strange looking device, nonetheless. I'm not sure what it is used for, but it was labeled as that, and I found that to be interesting. Um, let's see here. Someone was curious if you ever came across a pilot, uh, Master Sergeant Curtis Roy, helo pilot. He was called Mr. Helicopter.
No, I never. Doesn't ring a bell with me. No.
No, I've not come across that as well. I've been looking through a bit. I'll keep looking, Kenneth, and see if we can find somebody who knew him or any info on him. Galil was wondering what were the best and worst enemy aircrafts that you encountered. Did y'all ever encounter MiGs coming across or anything of the sort?
No, we never encountered any enemy aircraft. However, at NKP when I was there in '69 and '70, we flew a what they called a night recce mission. Just kind of at various times we'd take off. You know, one day it'd be a midnight takeoff, and the next day it'd be a 4 a.m. takeoff or something. And we'd fly with the security police, and they had daylight scopes. Just fly a perimeter around the base to see if there was any activity around the base. And at times we would get calls from, I think it was the Invert, I believe it was who it was. Anyway, the radar folks, and they would tell us it looked like a helicopter coming out of Laos over toward Thailand, and they'd send us off to chase them. Never saw one. We And of course, we couldn't have fired on them in Thailand anyway. But what we did to feel good about if we ever found one, what we would do, we carried a great big long logging chain in the cabin. And our goal was if we ever saw one, we were going to fly over and drop the chain down into its rotors and down it that way.
Wow.
Whether it ever worked or not, but
all right, guys. In these photos, I've just found someone who is gave us a little information on gosh almighty, I just lost it. This is about the NVA bamboo tool we just saw. Let me find where it was here. I apologize. Here we are. And maybe this will make a little more sense. NVA training aid photo, 1970. The photo depicts an NVA training aid of a bamboo helicopter that was captured in action. That's what CIA meant. Okay. And later presented to the 20th Special Operations Squadron, the Green Hornets, and displayed in their missions operations office, their MO at Bami Tui East. Wow. So it actually was a training tool.
yeah, I guess so.
That's pretty interesting. They were they were pretty ingenious about coming up with, and there's some flight patterns, and they were pretty ingenious about coming up with stuff like that to train. I found something else on one of their 51s to where they didn't have sights, or they had the one sight, but they created some extra ones and somehow made the outline of a helo. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. How they were able to at least learn a bit and adapt and improvise. Nothing quite like y'all in the SOG men, but they gave it their best shot, so to speak. Let's see. Jason, nice to see you, Jason. Hope you're doing good today. I've seen some patrols of y'all with large spotlights on gunships. Did you have any on the helicopters you ever flew on, and did you use them?
No, I never saw those. I've seen those pictures, but I never flew with any of those in either of my tours. I think they had some at Herbert Field and flew with them there and when they were first getting them and trying to, establish procedures. But I never flew with them.
I'm gonna bring up one of your. I believe this is one of your extract and insert photos, and I've always had a question that maybe this will lead into a few more. There's two right here. This is one. I believe this is yours, where if you see right there, I believe that is a helicopter. I believe the gear or one of the gears or something went wrong, and they actually crashed the SOG team on insert, and everyone was okay. Did you have any instance like that when you guys were inserting or flying cover or anything to where it went haywire and the guys went into the trees or had to quickly abort or
Yes, actually, that is me. That's my bird.
oh God.
We had a 6-man team on board. This is about, I don't know, 20 miles or so into Laos. And we were flying at about 2,000 feet or something like that. The Huey, the F model and P model Huey has a little bit of has a different engine than the rest of the Hueys, and because of the way the engine, it has a T58 engine, which is the same engine that's on the H3s. And on that engine, the drive is out the rear of the engine, not out the front, which worked fine on the H3s because the engines were mounted in front of the transmission. But on the Huey, they had to, they mounted it same area where the T53 engine was mounted. But there's what was called a speed decreaser gearbox that mounted to the back of the engine with a drive shaft that went forward along the side of the engine up to the transmission to get power to it. And we're chugging along just fine, happy heading to our LZ, and all of a sudden we heard a big bang, and we didn't have any more power to the transmission. The engine was running fine, but the speed decreaser gearbox had blown up and caught fire. And so we immediately ended our rotation, and luckily that was really the only area he could have found to put that bird in. And my pilot was John Pfizer, Captain John Pfizer was the pilot on that. And one of the, it was kind of a little, not a marsh, but a soggy area next to a stream. And one of the softest landings I ever had in a helicopter. Beautiful landing. But we got down on the ground, and the team, the 6-man team, and my left door gunner went out the left side and went over. And I've got some better photos of them. You can actually see them by that big tree over to the left side of that picture. And then Captain Pfizer and I got out the right side and up a little hill there. We got up and hid behind a bush. He was on one side of the bush, big bush, and I was on the other side of it. And we were down there. Of course, our gunships were flying overhead. And after a few minutes, I went around the bush to try to find Captain Pfizer, and he wasn't there. And it was like, well, oh crap. So I started down the little hill and get down to the flat area where the helicopter was sitting, and to go over where the team was at and my gunner, my left gunner. And when I got down there, I could see one of our slicks had landed up around that little hill that we were hiding on. And so I went heading for it. And when I got there, there's Captain Pfizer sitting in the cabin. He had seen the slick come in to get us and come over and land. I hadn't seen it. And he thought I had seen it. So he took off and left me there by myself. The other funny thing that happened that day was after we had landed and on the ground, I got my M60 off the mount, and I got some ammo belts and wrapped them around my thing like a Rambo. Picked up my survival vest and something else. Oh, and I had an M79 too. I picked that up and jumped out, and I went about a foot. I had forgot to disconnect my gunner's belt. So So I had to turn around and set all that stuff down and get myself disconnected, picked it all up and started to leave again. And I looked back and there's Captain Pfizer reaching around the armor plate trying to open his door. So I had to set it all down again and open the door for him to get him out. So that was kind of a little humorous thing that went on with that. And then another little end of this tale is after they picked us up, this happened in October of '67, about 4 or 5 days before Jackie Kennedy was making an official visit to Laos. So they wouldn't let us destroy the helicopter. They wouldn't send anything in to destroy it. They went through Saigon, through General Westmoreland, and they ordered a Army CH-47 to go get it out of Laos. And when they found out where it was at, they refused to go. And my understanding was that the pilot that refused to go got a personal call from General Westmoreland and said, "You will go get that bird. I don't care what you do with it after you get it across the fence, but you'll go get it out of where it's at." They ended up going in there and making a night pickup of that bird. And they brought it back to Pleiku that night. And then the next day they brought it back up to us at FOB2. And then the real ringer on this tale is thanks to the internet. I was on one of the Huey group Facebook pages, and some guy posted a thing in there that he picked up a strange looking Huey at night in Laos one time. And I started corresponding with him. Well, he was the guy that actually hooked the cable to the bottom of that Chinook and brought my bird back that night. So he didn't come up the next day. And of course, I didn't know who he was at that time. So I thought that's kind of interesting. Here's, I don't know, 50 years later, and some guy on the internet is a guy that I had some contact with that I didn't even know. So.
I gotta tell you, Facebook is so annoying and divisive and can be very toxic. But I tell you, I love it for reasons like that. And heck, I wouldn't have met you and most of the other guys had I not created the SAW group or been in the group. So I love things like that. Y'all getting together and it's. I can't imagine what that must have been like for you. There you see guy that got your bird and brought it back and hooked it up. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
Outstanding. And speaking about your little comedic running back and forth and gear issue there, what was the normal specifically SOG mission? What were you carrying for your personal? Of course you had the M60 that could be taken off. Did you carry a rifle? Did you only carry a 38? What was your survival or E&E gear, if you will?
Yeah, we had a 38 sidearm, and then the M60, mounted on, this is on the slicks, the M60 mounted, and an M16, and then some of us had an M79 as well. And that was pretty much what anybody carried. A few of them, some of the SOG guys wanted to give us some other weapons and stuff. Matter of fact, I had an M14 that they had given me at FOB2 after one of the missions, still in this Cosmoline. I think it was a World War II issue. But I ended up giving it away. Didn't want to try to go through the hassle of getting it back to the States. So.
Oh, yeah. Wow, man. M14, that would have been, you'd have been knocking some people down with that thing. Woo. Yeah. Well, I thought here we're at an hour or so, and I know people are going to want to hear a little bit about Jerry. We definitely can't do a Green Hornet and CCS podcast without mentioning the legendary Jerry Shriver. Could you, before we get into some of the photos and some of the more the missions that you helped him out with and y'all worked together on, could you maybe enlighten us a little bit about Jerry and maybe how you first came across Jerry?
Well, I first came across him at FOB2 when his team came to my slick for an insert. And I probably did, probably 10 or 12 inserts with Jerry and his team. It seemed like, I don't know how the rotation worked, but it kind of seemed like my crew ended up with Jerry a lot. And he was quite the individual. Talk about a warrior there. There's one for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, did he did he at that point in time, with it being Project Omega, and he had already been with A502, which was the early reactionary force for Project Omega, did he already have that Mad Dog legend or aura about him at that?
Well, he definitely had an aura about him. I would, as I remember, I think some of the guys called him Mad Dog at that time too. You know, I think that was an early handle that he picked up.
I've got some great photos. I'm gonna show. Some of the guys may not have seen this, and quite frankly, guys, I don't know where some of these are. Some of them looked like they were at Duco. Some of them looked like they were at Duck Lap.
That one's at FOB too.
Okay, I was about to say, and one of them for sure looked like Kontum. Would this was this Jerry and his team's normal look and loadout, if you will, when you were running them into the jungle?
Yes, that's pretty much the way they looked on most of the missions.
And was we hear him carrying all kinds of weird weapons, and I think that's been overblown because I've spoken to a few men, although a few times he did carry some strange weapons. But we see he's got a pistol. I know for a fact he carried several pistols, but was he carrying the grease gun? Was he I didn't see him very many times with a Car 15. Do you remember what he was using at that point in time?
I remember him carrying a Swedish K. I think he did on a couple of missions. I inserted him that he had an M15, M16, Car 15. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And I've got several photos of Klaus that'll come up. And there's Klaus right there, and there's an Uzi on one of the men, and there's Jerry back here. I've been told this might actually be the photo of his last mission. This might be the last photo of him taken.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recognize that particular location.
I do not either, and I'm very hesitant when people tell me stuff like that, considering we don't know all the history. There's been a book rumored for years to come out, but someone did tell me that was because there's two in that collection that was his last known photo. Can't verify, but he definitely quite the guy.
Interesting thing you mentioned Klaus. A lot of folks didn't know that when he was at FOB2, he had a German Shepherd that was named Adolf.
Yes, sir.
And he had a monkey named Susie. And a lot of times when he'd come back in out of the field, Susie and Klaus and Jerry would come into the little club we had there and get to drinking, and they'd get over underneath the table and just get wiped out, and they'd get into fights. Klaus and Susie would get into fights, and then when we moved, the Green Hornets moved to FOB or to Bamatui. I don't think Jerry came right away. He was a little later before he came down to Bamatui, and he didn't have Adolf. He had Klaus. And the tale I've been told, and I don't know how true it is or not, is that when Susie and Klaus got into one of their drunken fights, that Susie killed Klaus, or Adolf, I mean. That's why he didn't have Adolf anymore. The difference I remember between Adolf and Klaus, Adolf had his right ear wouldn't stand up; it laid down. And of course, being a bunch of GIs there at FOB2, we taught Adolf to chase beer cans. You throw a stick and he would just ignore you, but you throw a beer can out there, zap, he go and got that thing and hauled it back to you right away.
I can't remember, where did Jerry get him, in Asia or in Thailand, or
I think what I was told was that when Jerry went R&R, which they almost forced him to do, or they actually did force him to do, but I was told that he brought the dog back from Japan or Okinawa, but I don't know that for sure. That's just what I've heard.
and I've got another great photo of Klaus, and it's actually after Jerry passed away and the man who adopted Klaus from the Green Hornets. But this is Curly at CCS, and I think that is Susie still right there, because the sergeant major, his nickname was Curly, had a monkey, and I believe that is Susie right there. There's the recon headquarters, but would crawl all over the guys, would rip mustaches off the guys, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And would be quite annoying sometimes. I'm sure, as a monkey can be.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have interactions with Klaus and Susie, or just Klaus, or?
Oh no, with both of them, we had a little pit area under a parachute out beside our shack at FOB2, and we would have steak fries out there 3 or 4 nights a week. And of course, we'd feed Susie Susie and Adolf both. So.
Wow, that's I always loved how y'all here y'all are warriors and all that, and finding little animals that need adopting, or what have you, and all, just how much y'all took to the animals, and guys loved other pets, and I always love hearing about y'all's pets. I am not sure who this gentleman is, but Mr. RT said that a group of the guys basically adopted Klaus after y'all lost Jerry, and Thor, Thorbu. Can't quite.
I've got his name. I can't make it out. I've got his name on a roster, but I can't think what it is right now. I can call that up for you and help you identify him.
I will would love that. I've got another photo of them feeding.
Thorburn, I think it is.
Thorburn. Okay. Wow. Great. It's a really touching story, and there's like you were talking about with him losing Adolf. There's a lot of rumors, and there's one particular I hope is true on what happened to Klaus, but I've heard, sadly, Klaus died in Vietnam. But I've also heard in the story I prefer to believe and hope to believe is that Martha Ray not only got Jerry's smoking jacket back to Fort Bragg, but also ended up getting Klaus back to the States. Oh. I would like to believe that.
Yeah, that'd be a nice story if it happened. I never heard that.
It's there. Like I said, there's a few things floating out there, but I hope that's the one. I prefer a good happy ending. Yeah. As we're gonna get into Jerry a little bit, because we've wow, time flies when we're talking about fun stuff. This is I'm not sure if this is your photo also, but on the aspects of inserting a team, but especially when you're called back to look for a team, what are the steps for you when let's just assume it's a prairie fire and the guys are under fire? Are they all along? I know they're keeping in contact with you. Are you able to, through time and time again of looking through jungle, are you able to pick up on muzzle fire, or are you strictly looking for panels? Well, how are you going to find a team out there?
Well, generally we have them pop a smoke, and then we try to designate a color so the bad guys won't pop a just as any smoke and make us think that that's who they are. But so we try to use colored smokes or white smoke. You know, we tell them to pop a white smoker, and then but you know the bad guys did pick up on that, and they'd start popping a smoke too. And sometimes some birds would go. I don't remember any of ours doing it, but I know some birds have gone into an LZ that was just the bad guys waiting for them.
Mm, mm, mm.
And sometimes it was a panel. Uh, Sometimes it was a flare, little pin flare.
How for you? I guess. Well, for you personally, I've just found Mr. Thornburg's photo album. Great photos. And there's him and Klaus. Great. I'll show that. For you in particular, or I should say, maybe your crew. What was the best? Some guys say the panel is very easy to see. Flare helps out. What would you guys refer to or ask them to use more likely than not to get a accurate location on them?
Well, most of the time it was smoke because a lot of times they would be in the trees or, you know, where there was a very small LZ and the smoke had to, you know, rise up through the trees before we could even start seeing it, which sometimes meant that they weren't right under where the smoke came up where we saw them. They would be someplace else. I remember one mission I flew out of Dak To, and it wasn't even our team. It was an Army team that the Army had put in, and they had been getting shot off all day long trying to pick them up. And they asked us, we were sitting there waiting for our team that was in the field in case they needed to pick up. But they asked us if we'd try to get their team out, and so we took off to do it. And they had been running all day, and they got into a real forested area, triple canopy forested area. And when we got there and were able to communicate with them, and the FAC had them pop a smoke, and this was one of the cases when the smoke came up, they weren't under it; they were somewhere else by the time the smoke got out above the trees. But we found and that by this time they had got broke contact and weren't being fired at anymore. And when we got there, we found a hole in this triple canopy, and by radio communication, they started guiding us down. And we got down through the first layer of the hole, and then we had to go forward. We found another hole, hovered down into that hole, and found another one, the third layer, and finally got down low enough that we could pick them up with a rope ladder. And no way, you couldn't hardly see the sky at all when we were down there picking them up with a rope ladder. And the LZ, this was probably the hairiest mission I flew ever. And the LZ was so tight that we didn't have room to swing the tail and turn around as we were heading back out. We had to back out, and it was very hairy. You know, watch 5 feet left or 5 feet right or whatever, and we backed out through the first two layers, and then we're about to get out under the third layer, and my pilot started going up just a little, about 5 feet more than he should have, and he clipped a big tree limb, and the blade chopped it up into firewood. And anyway, we got out of the hole and had the team on board and heading back to Dak To, and the bird flew just fine. So once we got back there and landed, and of course I inspected the bird and the blades. Well, one of the blades had a dent in the leading edge that was as big as my fist, and we had to change the blade. It couldn't fly anymore. It's just too dangerous. But that bird flew as smooth as could be. And then one of the other days we had picked up a team and they were in the bamboo, and we were hovering down in the bamboo and clipping it off. And the bamboo, the blade, the trim tab on the Huey blade hit the bamboo and knocked it out of trim. We got the team on board, and as we were trying to get airspeed up, that bird was vibrating so bad we found a clear area and set her down and abandoned it and left it there. And the other slicks picked us up. But when we got back to the camp, or wherever the FOB was, we got the trim tab bender and went back out to where we'd abandoned that bird and bent the trim tab back into a decent shape and got it where it would fly and brought it back. And all we had to do with that bird is just track it. We didn't have to change the blade or anything. So strange things.
Holy cow. Wow. I mean and I constantly have to tell people, and when they talk about their dads after watching stuff like this, oh, my dad was only a mechanic or a maintenance officer or a blah blah blah. I was like, if your dad or men didn't know how to do that or weren't taking care of the birds, there's no way Saul could have done what they did, or there'd be a lot more dead SOG still in Laos, because it takes I hate saying this, it takes a village to get a team running in and out and to stay safe. I mean, it's amazing that people look at their service that way, and I've even spoke to vets that feel that way, and I've said that to Vietnam vets, and
Uh,
I
it's
mean,
absolutely true. It's a total team effort. I mean, that even goes down to the guys in the chow hall and the guys that put your mail in your mailbox or brings the mail to you, or it's a team effort.
absolutely, absolutely, and I should have mentioned even them as well. I mean, it's why it's called an army. It takes an army.
Yep.
Um, and since we were actually talking about they're striking and cutting some bamboo, Jason, he's been around with us for a long time. Well, since the beginning, I should say. He remembers your last episode, and he said he thought you remembered that Jerry said he liked getting into the bamboo because the enemy didn't like going in. And was that something he told you to prepare for, or did you pick up on it that he liked getting into bamboo?
No, I asked Jerry after I don't know, 2 or 3 times we'd extracted them out of bamboo. And I'm like, why do you always go into the bamboo areas? And he said, well, that's because the NVA guys are afraid of bamboo vipers.
Oh,
Okay, that makes sense, I guess. But of course,
I'd be afraid too.
those extractions out of bamboo were with the strings.
And how tough is that for you guys doing a string extract? I mean, I know it takes you getting the strings on the ground. It takes the guys being perfect, getting them on, but also you're having to guide the pilot to not crash the helicopter. I mean, how are you managing an extract with strings like that?
Well, of course, it's again a team effort. It's a coordination effort with the co-pilot and the pilot and the two gunners giving directions on how much he needs to increase his hover once we got him on the strings to get them clear and take off. And of course, you're watching them when you're flying to make sure, not that you could do anything, but to make sure that they're still hanging on. I had
Safe, yeah.
one day that we used the McGuire rig, and it had like a loop seat that they would sit on, and then it had up on the string, it had another little loop that you put your wrist in. And that was designed that if they fell off the seat, the wrist strap would tighten up and keep them on the wrist. Well, I had that happen one day on a team we were extracting. I wasn't on the bird that was extracting them. I was on the empty, the basic crew bird, and flying along beside them. And of course, I had to call the word out that this guy almost fell out, and the other guys are holding on to him with their legs wrapped around him. And so we found what we felt was a sure enough area we could land and get him inside. And we landed and put him down and got him inside, and he ended up. I think all he had was a dislocated shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary enough being extracted, you know, in any manner. Strings exponentially so. And there his seat goes out, and I mean, I. I can't imagine being taken back to base, and thank God his men, like you said, you know, weight can throw off where you're at in the stack. Thank God he was close enough to his men that they could wrap their legs around him and get him back to base, hanging from an arm.
Yeah, and of course that was in the early days. Later on, the rigs they used on the string, they had a strap that they could connect, you know, a buckle that they could connect where they're actually connected to the strap, not just holding on with their hands or their seat.
Boy, oh boy, that is. Mm, mm, mm. Every time I see or hear the guys talking about coming out on strings, it just sounds pucker factor inducing. Hey, it's better than being left on the ground, but God Almighty, being either drugged through the trees or just being that high up on a string is terrifying.
Yeah, I agree.
I was looking for. I had some pictures of some of the ropes and ladders I was going to bring up, but we've seen most of those. I was oh, there was one question about mirrors, and I was curious about that too. Did y'all have much luck seeing mirrors when guys would use the signal mirrors?
Yeah, that was a real good device to signal you with. You know, the weather was right and so forth. But I don't remember. I can't remember any of the team pickups we did that was by a mirror. I've done team pickups where they've used the panels and of course the smoke. Most of the time it was the smoke.
That is heavy duty. Wow, there's some great Kontum photos of y'all back in the early days. Daniel has a great question. Were you only with the M60, or were you on the minigun as well? Did you upgrade?
No, I never uh, flew with the gunships. The crew chief, I was a crew chief and a flight mechanic, and the crew chief stayed with their bird. And originally we had four uh, UH-1F gunships that came from the Lucky Tiger in Thailand uh, to form the Green Hornets. So those original four birds were the only ones we had that were wired for guns. And the crew chief stayed with those. And of course, my bird was a slick, so I stayed with it. The later on, as the birds got the P model modification, which also included wiring for guns, any of the birds then that had the P model modification could operate as a gunship. And my bird, during my whole tour, my bird never got the P model modification. The P model modification, a lot of people associate that as a gunship, which it was, but there were also F model gunships, and the P model mod really what brought it out, what changed the designation from an F model to a P model was the P models had armor plated seats for the pilots. It had some armor plating around some of the engine and transmission areas. It had a secure voice radio and another radio where we could talk directly to the teams. Before that modification, if you tried to get a message to a team, it had to get relayed through the FAC or something like that. And but anyway, the only visible way that I know of that you can tell the difference between an F model and a P model is the P model has two of the shark fin antennas, radio antennas on the cabin roof. The F model does not have those. So if you ever see, I think there's a picture I just saw floating around today of a couple of birds refueling at a pit, and the closest one is a gunship, and the other one is a slick. The closest one I can see, matter of fact, I can see the tail number on it. but it's an F model gunship. It's not a P model gunship. And the slick is also, both of them are P models. So.
Is that the shark fin you're referring to right here on my cursor?
Yeah, you can see part of it there. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
If you
And
see
there, of
two,
course, is the minigun right there. That bad mamma jamma.
yeah, if you see two of those antennas on the cabin roof, then that's a P model.
Okay. How I know they also got updated engines as well. How fast were the Green Hornets? I've always heard that some of the later models could haul tail.
Well, I think the speed on them are all pretty much the same. The engine power was really more for lifting.
Okay.
Didn't have a lot to do with airspeed. And I can't off the top of my head remember, but I'm thinking 120 to 140 or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. And same way with the N models, the twin engine birds that they got later, uh, it's just really doesn't have a lot to do with airspeed.
That's what I can't. I don't even. I thought I saw maybe a 1500 horsepower motor, and I think one of them was a top speed, like you said, of 128. I believe
Yeah,
is one of the figures I saw.
yeah,
But
that sounds.
that's got to be pretty fast, though. I mean, for a helicopter, nonetheless. I mean, that's
Yeah, they get along. Yeah,
wow.
it was interesting. The T-58 engine that's on the F and the P model, and it's the same engine that's on the CH or HH3s. Uh, is very susceptible to FOD damage. Uh, any little rock or anything that gets into it, it'll just tear the hell out of that engine. The T-53 engine, like was on the H-43s or the Army Hueys, uh, was really tough. Matter of fact, the way we had a standard procedure to clean the T-53 engines by dropping walnut hulls into the intake and letting them go through the engine. And it was always nice to get a nice fresh roasted walnut smell coming out the tailpipe. If you tried to do that on a T-58 engine, you'd have destroyed it.
There's two P models, I think, right there with the fins, I believe.
Yeah, that's a P model, and you can see the cargo compartment on that one too. There under the exhaust to the left of the guy's elbow. There you go. The F model and P model Hueys, they had a B model fuselage, a civilian tail cone, and a larger rotor. I think it was called a 540 rotor system or something like that. And it was a larger rotor system. That's the reason the tail cone was longer, because the civilian tail cone was longer.
Okay. I'm surprised this question hasn't come up, especially with you being a crew chief and a gunner. What was there any training? Was there a familiarization, or were you thrown into the deep end, identifying friendly troops when you went to an extract? I can only imagine it would be somewhat off-putting, nerve-wracking, or pretty antsy when you're coming to extract a SOG team and there's multiple indigenous who, much like this man, is dressed well, not fully in the NVA, but he's carrying an AK nonetheless, and he's indigenous. Did you did you have any tools or methods you used to make sure nothing happened in that sense?
Well, generally the teams would advise us how close they were to somebody, to an enemy, and of course our normal extraction procedure is, of course, the slick went in to get the team, but before they went in, our gunships, and we usually flew with 4 gunships, would well, sometimes it was 3 gunships. Anyway, we had gunship support with us. In the early days at FOB2, when we only had the original 4 gunships, a lot of times we would have 2 Army gunships fly with us also. As as gunship support. But anyway, when you went in to get a team, they of course telling you where they're at, how far they think the enemy is, and so forth, and what direction. And the gunships are orbiting overhead, and if they're in contact, the gunships are usually firing in the directions and the distance that the team gives them to clear the LZ. Not to say they always succeed. I know several times we took rounds when we were picking up teams.
Good Lord, that that again, pucker factor inducing. Man. Um, Gosh, I had that. That was a great picture of signal panels and purple smoke being used on a SOG extract. I wish I would have had that picture ready. But we've coming up on an hour and 29 minutes here. And of course we always have you back on because we're always interested in having Helo pilots and Green Hornets on. But I was curious if you could go over a little bit about maybe one of your more notable missions. I know Jerry was a part of one. You earned a DFC on another instance, but could you walk us through one of your more hairy missions or extractions while supporting SOG?
Sure. Well, as I said earlier, probably the hairiest mission I ever flew was the one where we went into that triple canopy and picked that team up, and we weren't on fire on that one. It was just where we were located at. But I remember one, the big mission I think I got a DFC on with Jerry was we had put his team in and were headed back to the FOB to park for the day. You know, we always put a team in and we go back to a forward operating base and stay there in case they needed an extraction, so we'd be there. And we were just about to get back to the FOB when Jerry called and needed an emergency extraction. That he was under fire, and our gunships went in and refueled first, and then we landed and refueled, and then as soon as we got airborne, we headed back to where he was at. And he had moved to an area. He was on the edge of a little lake, and he said he was getting fire from three sides. He was backed up against the water. And when we got there, the gunships went in and started, pounding away at the enemy. And we're talking to Jerry, and Jerry gave us his location. He said, I'm out here in this little short grass on the edge of the lake, my team. He also had a 7-man team on that one, I remember. He had a mountain yard that he was training. And anyway, he said, anytime you can come and get me, come and get me. So the gunships cleared us in, and they said the fire had been reduced somewhat, but he was yelling back and forth to the NVA, telling them to surrender, that he had them surrounded. And of course, he was surrounded, is what the picture was. And radioing us, they told us they were down to about 2 grenades each and one or two clips each for their rifles. And so anyway, as we're heading in, and we were getting ready to, or he asked us, I think, do you need me to pop smoke? And we said, hell no, we can see you laying there in that grass, just as clear as a bell on the edge of that lake. So he said, okay, well, when you come in, he said, put your nose right at us. And when we jump up to get on board, there's going to be 3 of us come in the right door, and the other 4 will come in the left door. And I was, okay, that's fine. And of course, we're firing all the way in. And we took, I think, 3 or 4 rounds on the bird that day, too. So we landed and got down, and we're firing, and the gunships are firing, and Jerry's team's firing, and they're running toward us. And here they come, and there's 4 of them coming in the right door. And Jerry saw that, and one of them was just training, and he had told them to go in 4 in the left door and 3 in the right door, and he wasn't going to put up it. And here we are under fire. Jerry grabs that guy by the rucksack, drug him around to the front, and made him come in the left side. And I'm yelling at Jerry, get on board, Jerry. I don't give a damn which door you get in. Get on board. And here he comes. Finally, we got on board and got out of there. And like I say, we took 3 or 4 rounds in my bird that day. But I know that's one mission. And I don't know how many times he did that, but I know that's one mission that he radioed to us that he had them surrounded when he was surrounded. And he's yelling at them to surrender, that he had them surrounded. Of course, he knew the gunships were coming. He knew how quick they were going to be there. So anyway, yeah, that was quite an interesting day that day.
What a guy! I mean, I've got him surrounded, and there he is, surrounded and blocked in at a lake. I've got him right where I want him. I mean, good Lord. There was gosh, someone just had a question pop up, and I have lost it, and it was about Jerry, and well, I've misplaced what I had. Hang on one second. I apologize. It was actually about. Oh, here it was about Kontum. When Project Omega or the Kontum work and all of that took place, most of the time, or I shouldn't say most of the time. This is 67. Were y'all moving around a lot, working as Omega, or were y'all strictly using Bami Tui and Kontum, or was Kontum mostly the pickup and launch point for Omega and y'all's teams at that point in time?
Yeah, well, in 67, from April or so when I got there until November, until we moved to Bami Tui, we launched and recovered at FOB2 all the time. And then after we moved to Bami Tui, that was still our launch and takeoff point. Yeah, that picture there, that's FOB2. There it is, yeah. Interesting there, you'll see the Hueys that are parked up kind of to the center left in that picture. Those are the Army gunships. Our birds are parked along the revetment wall. And the reason for that is those Army gunships are B models, and they had, I think, 1,300 shaft horsepower T-53s in them. Anyway, when they were loaded and they couldn't hover. And to take off, they had to make a running takeoff, and they'd be bouncing across the ground. And their gunners and crew chiefs would be running alongside them until they got a little transitional lift, and then they'd hop in. So we always let them park up by the chow hall area because that was the longest run from that area to the corner of the revetment or the compound. It's kind of a triangle shaped compound. They had the longest run along there to get some transitional lift. Sometimes I'd see those guys. I wondered if they made it or not. As soon as their crew jumped on, I've seen them bounce off the top of that revetment. And on the other side of that revetment, there was a little stream down there. It dropped off maybe 20 feet or so. Matter of fact, that's where they did our laundry at. But anyway, I've seen them bounce off the top of that revetment, and you wonder if they're going to come up because where we were standing there, you couldn't see them after they went down in that low area where the stream was. And pretty soon off in the distance, you'd see that Army slick coming up and getting some altitude, or that gunship, I mean.
Boy, that had to be not only wild to be in that helicopter, having to do that on a daily basis, fully loaded, but to also witness that. I mean, that had to be pretty scary. Seeing, God, I hope this dude these guys make it off the tarmac. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Gosh Almighty.
That one picture that you had up there last, it shows the little parachute camp area that we had where we did our cookout next to our hooch.
It's some I thought I had Mr. Jim Fleming's photos. I did have Black Mariah. I found a photo Jason sent to me that I had shared. But there she is, all painted up.
Yeah, yeah.
at NKP, I believe. But that is that's were there many other than the blackbirds and everything? Did they kind of stop after that with painting the birds black? I don't remember seeing many other birds black.
To my knowledge, that's the only one that was painted black, and I explained earlier, I think, how that came about. The legend that goes with it is they painted it black because they were going to do night inserts. The truth of the matter, I think, is that it was painted black because the crew chief was ordered to, after they first got there, that was a tack bird. They came in with a deep olive drab tack paint job and had a big tack emblem on the side with a lightning bolt, and of course the U.S. Air Force and stars and bars, and the crew chief was told to paint out all those markings. And this was done at NKP, and the only paint he could find was a bucket of, well, a couple of buckets of flat black paint, and he painted out all those markings like the line chief had told him to do. And when the line chief saw him and how crappy it looked with all these black spots all over it, he just told him to paint the whole bird. So they painted the whole bird black, and that I think is the real truth of why that bird ended up being black. And like I say, as far as I know, that's the only one that was painted black. But it built itself quite a legend. So.
Wow, that is. These are some of the end model gunships. A few photos before we end up. There was a question or two I was going to show, but good lord, this is they've got the minigun. Looks like they've got a combat shotgun. It looks right there. No, that's an AK. I was about to say it looks like a shotgun right there, but I can see the fold up stock right there. Got their med kits ready to go. Boy, y'all definitely went ready for action in Indian country. I mean, good lord.
I don't, unless that's an N. I don't think that was a green hornet bird. I think that was an army bird.
Wow. Okay.
Well, it may have been an N model. That's what it was. Yeah, it was an N model. Yeah.
Gosh, I'm so glad I've and again, thanks goes out to Mr. RT Rivero and the whole organization, the 20th SOS organization, for allowing me to have these photos and to share these photos. Just an immense honor. I wanted to show off the guys with Mr. Thorburn and Klaus, because these have never been seen before. There is Klaus. Looks like he's a happy young pup getting to. Looks like that's some meat of some sort he's getting to eat on. Looks like he's really enjoying that from the looks of that face on him. I had one of him feeding him at the flight line, which was great, but there's another good one. There's good old Klaus. And sadly, there's Mr. John's Arlington Cemetery headstone, and that's a wonderful photo of Mr. John right there. But let me get this last question, and we'll let you end on how you would like to end. Let's see here. Well, guys, I guess I did answer it. Someone was asking about music, and I cannot find it. What was it was I know it was what was y'all's favorite music, and correct at the time, wasn't it reel to reel for y'all to listen to tapes and or listen to music other than on the radio?
Yeah, it would be reel to reel at that time.
Reel
And I don't remember the music that much, except I remember the song that I don't remember what the title is, but the words were "We got to get out of this place."
The Animals, we got to get out of this place. That's it.
Yeah.
that there's I think one of the person was how many clear Credence Clearwater Revival cassettes did y'all wear out while in Vietnam?
Probably a lot, yeah.
Probably not many. I know a lot of guys were listening to the Animals. Gosh, who was it else? the Mamas and the Papas, Vanilla Fudge, Country Joe and the Fish, the Chambers Brothers. That Time Has Come Today. That's a great song. A lot of people get keyed in on one song they've heard in the movies and think that covers the entire Vietnam music, but that y'all had some great music back then.
Speaking of listening to the radio too, a little short tale here. When I was at NKP in '64, that was top secret. I couldn't tell anybody where I was going, and nobody was supposed to know it. And here there was 24, 25 of us there at NKP, and when we stayed in a hotel in town and commuted back and forth to the base. And when we got back to the hotel, we'd sit around and listen to Radio Hanoi because they played American music. And Thai music is just, we didn't understand that Thai music at all. But the Radio Hanoi would play American music. And I think the lady that eventually became known as Hanoi Hannah was one of the people that was on there. Anyway, I was back at the hotel and sitting on the little balcony. It was a 2-story hotel, and sitting on a little balcony drinking some beers with the guys and listening to Radio Hanoi. And in a break in the songs came on, and this lady came on and said, "We want to congratulate Airman Burns at Nakhon Phanom, Thailand, with the H-43 unit on the birth of his baby daughter back in Missouri." And it's like, okay, I've had too much to drink. I can't believe what I'm hearing. I knew my wife was due, but I found out, and she gave the weight and the time of birth. And it was another week before I got a letter from or 2 weeks before I got a letter from my wife confirming that. Whoever that was, and I say it was Hanoi Hannah, she had the date, the time, the weight, everything exactly right, and broadcasting it to me at an NKP at a top secret location. So I found out about my first baby's birth from Radio Hanoi.
You have got to be kidding me.
Well, turns out what had happened, the hospital, of course, got a hold of the Red Cross. The Red Cross sent a message to my unit at Clark, where I was TDY from, and we had HU-16s that would come out of Clark and fly what they call duck buck missions, just rescue cap missions. And the ones when our birds came out of Clark, they would bring us our mail or any kind of news or anything. Well, they had got a message relayed to them by radio from Clark, from the Red Cross, to them, and they relayed it down to our radio guys at NKP, and they brought a handwritten message to me, which the message was garbled. It didn't have everything that Hanoi had. So the message I got said 2 birds, both doing fine. Well, I also knew that my wife has her family has a history of twins. So I didn't know if she had 2 birds meant 2 twins. Actually, it was supposed to have read 2 burns, not birds. So anyway, it was 2 weeks before I got the official size, weight, date, and time and everything from my wife.
Was Hanoi Hannah correct though? What's her?
She was 100% correct.
Holy cow!
It's like she had that message from the Red Cross in her hands.
You probably did. I mean, how?
Well, I'm sure she picked it up off the relay from the bird from the HU-16, and they just didn't relay the complete message down to our guys, or I didn't write down the whole thing or something.
Good Lord, have mercy!
I've got a picture of that hotel that I've given it to my daughter. I said that's where I found out when you were born.
Boy, that is that's one heck of a way to find out about your growing family, and I can only imagine what your daughter must think, knowing about your history, and to find out you learned she was born from a communist propaganda channel trying to demoralize y'all. I mean, I'm completely flabbergasted here with this.
We also found out that the top secret of where we were at and what we were doing there was not such top secret at all.
Not
Just for our families.
boy, that is that is, yeah, guys are saying that, yeah, that is absolutely the most amazing thing I've ever heard. Absolutely, as well. Yeah, that absolutely a side story that just completely blew my mind. Good God Almighty. Well, I don't think we can end on a better story than that right there. That's a heck of a story. We'd if it's all right with you, in the new year, we always like having people back, and especially since it's been so long since we had you back, we'd like to have you back again, if you'd be open to it.
Well, I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, Weed and Watch is a great name. That gave me chills as well. I'm completely blown away. Um, Is there anything else you'd like to leave with us for the day before we shut down, sir?
Well, I just want to thank you, Bud, for doing this, and I am always enjoying. It brings back some memories, some good, some bad, and I appreciate the people that participate in the chat and ask questions. And so anytime you want me on here, well, I'll be happy to do it. There's some other folks around. I'm sure that. Matter of fact, a friend of mine, William Lewis, I think you know him out of Texas.
Mm-hmm,
Uh,
mm-hmm.
he asked me the other day if I'd done one of these, and I told him, and he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I got another one scheduled, so he may be listening in too."
Mr. William, I hope you will come on. I've been talking to him here recently. He's been sharing some good photos with me, and I'll go ahead and drop the little secret. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to have him and Howard Sugar on, who are at CCC together at the same time on. So, Mr. William, if you're watching, you heard Mr. Jim. He always enjoys visiting with us, and I know you would too. So definitely come on. And as I said, we definitely want to have you back. You were always a wonderful guest. And before I end, because we've got a son of a Mike Force vet and a Project Omega vet and Dead A vet, Roddy Patterson. By chance, did you come across or remember a SF man in Omega by the name of Pat Patterson?
No, that doesn't ring a bell with me. No.
You probably had so many names and faces and all that popping through. I always try and help and ask out. His dad was one hell of a warrior.
I appreciate you doing that, because sometimes you'll hit on, like I hit on the guy that hooked up my bird and brought it out of Laos. Sometimes you'll hit on some information that a family member will greatly appreciate.
Absolutely. And we've had some pretty amazing episode. Absolutely, Daniel. And we've had some pretty good instance like that, getting information out on these, and just by happenstance, a family member is watching and they'll comment and say, had no idea my father, grandfather, uncle did this. And that's really why I do it, to preserve y'all's story and to help families learn more about if their relative didn't like to share. So it's to preserve y'all's history. And I just thank you for trusting us and coming on to share and let us preserve your history. It means a lot.
Well, you're more than welcome.
Thank you, sir. And we'll go ahead and shut down, and I will stay in touch with you, and we'll get a date lined up here to have you back and be our resident Green Hornet.
Okay. Sounds good.
All righty, sir. You have a good afternoon, and I will be in touch.
Okay, bud. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.